Hello, and welcome to episode 83 of the Naked Eye podcast. This is Nathan Oxenfeld coming to you today in April 2025. I am the founder and owner of Integral Eyesight Improvement, and this is the practice that I started over 10 years ago to actually help other people learn about natural vision improvement and teach people the Bates method in the form of one-on-one lessons, the creation of online courses and group programs, live events like workshops, classes, retreats. And ever since I started teaching this, I knew deep down that I didn't just want to be teaching it to people individually to help in that kind of direct one-on-one way, but I knew eventually I wanted to actually train other people to teach it and actually do my own teacher training program to certify more natural vision teachers out in the world. Because at the moment, the holistic vision community is fairly small in the grand scheme of things, especially when it comes to the amount of people who could really benefit from natural vision improvement. There's really not a whole lot of natural vision teachers around the world. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's essentially kind of like now more now than ever. But honestly, the field itself is also not even that old. It's only been around for just over a century with the contributions from Dr. William Bates in the early 1900s, which century is a long time, and I would have hoped that it would have been kind of more caught on or farther along on a societal level at this point. But we got to be patient with these new ideas and challenging the status quo. And even while we're waiting for natural vision improvement to maybe make a greater impact on a bigger, more global scale, we can still be helping people along the way. We can still be helping individuals because this really is like a grassroots movement, is coming from the ground up and kind of giving the power back to the people. So that's exactly what I did. During the pandemic, I actually got things collected and organized and felt essentially ready to actually start offering a teacher training program. And I ran my very first teacher training program, which was the beta version, from 2022 to 2024. So it was a 2-year teacher training program split up into 3 different levels with little pauses or breaks in between the different levels. And over that 2-year period, I worked very intimately with this small group of teachers that I was training and ended up certifying my first 2 natural vision teachers who I want to introduce you to today in today's episode in these short little conversations that I have with both of them about particular topics that they are personally passionate about or kind of incorporate into their approach of teaching the Bates method. Their names are June Milich and Nalini Ramji. They're from Arizona and California, respectively, and they both had experience with the Bates method and natural vision improvement even before working with me and doing the training. But both of them actually had already gone through my 6-month vision improvement program group and even the holistic vision program. So we were already working together, and that's part of how I knew that they would be good fits for the teacher training program. And they were willing to go into the beta experience, knowing that it was kind of a work in progress and in the process of developing. And they helped me out a lot, actually, in terms of giving me feedback and helping to figure out the best way to build the teacher training, which was highly inspired by the teacher training program that I went through underneath Dr. Jerry Ann Tabor, who was my vision teacher, who certified me to become a Bates Method teacher. Her program was also approximately about a 2-year process, and it required 200 hours of practice teaching to make sure that I was really putting it into practice and I was able to demonstrate what I was learning for her. But it was a one-on-one training. It was just me and her. So I knew in my training, I wanted to open it up to more than just one-on-one. So there is a big one-on-one component to my teacher training program. I met a lot individually with June and Nalani throughout the process, but they were going through it together. And that was something I didn't have when I was going through my teacher training program. It was more solo, which was awesome to get that individualized attention from Dr. Tabor. But sometimes it would have been nice to have somebody else to talk with or share with other than the teacher and kind of process some of these things. So it was really cool to see how that was kind of cultivated and a part of this process. And I guess I was also partially inspired by my yoga teacher training because before I went through my natural vision teacher training, I went to Yogaville to become a registered yoga teacher through this 1 month residential version of a teacher training where I actually lived there and stayed overnight for a month and was focusing on this 6, 7 days a week for a month straight versus my vision teacher training being online and spread out over this 2 year period. But I just learned so much from both my yoga teacher training and the natural vision teacher training, not only about these topics themselves, but about myself. And that was the beautiful thing to see in working with June and Nalini was yes, we were working on training them to become proficient natural vision teachers, but they each also had their own continuing process of their own vision healing journey. And something about taking the teacher training program actually helped them with that. Just like me going through my teacher training program helped me fully heal my vision. So it's kind of like that old adage we've probably heard of you don't truly know something until you can teach it. So I think there might be something to that here where when we really go to the level of depth required in a teacher training program about the Bates method or natural vision improvement, we really immerse ourselves in it in a new way compared to if we're just kind of studying it or applying it just personally. So you don't necessarily have to go through a full 2 year teacher training program to teach the Bates method basics. Swinging, sunning, palming, these relaxation things are pretty simple and straightforward, and you don't need a full certification to let somebody know that they can cover their eyes with their palms and it feels good, or they can step outside with their eyes closed and swing side to side and feel that warm sunlight on the closed eyes and feel the relaxation that comes from that. Some of this stuff is actually quite natural and simple and straightforward. If you want to take it to the next level with more of the advanced and intermediate practices, then you definitely do need a certification, and especially if you're interested in kind of taking it to the next level of helping lots of people, not just people in your immediate, friend group or family or coworkers and stuff. So that is something I'm going to be offering moving forwards as a new, pretty much regular service is the option to join my teacher training program. I'm actually currently in the middle of my next one. They're approaching the next break in between levels 2 and 3, so they're going to be going for another almost year. So that's going to be wrapping up in 2026. So that's likely when I'll be getting another group up and running because I'm at this point pretty much just doing one group at a time, and they run in these 2 year time frames. So that just might be something to keep in the back of your mind if this is something that you are curious to look more into. You can just kind of know about the sort of schedule of when groups are forming. So it might be every 2 years or so, like on those even years, 2026, 2028, 2030, so on. Because maybe you're not ready to go through the training. Maybe you're still working on your own vision, because that's an important sort of prerequisite before we teach other people to improve our vision. We really need to be focusing on ourselves and making sure that we're teaching out of this place of authenticity based on our own experience. So that's what you're going to get a little glimpse of today in these snippets from June and Nalini. With June, we talk a little bit about the approach towards these vision practices, not just what practices to do and when to do them and how long to do them and how often to repeat them, but more so about the how we're doing them. How are they actually making you feel? What is the actual outcome or result of this practice? Could we be tweaking it and modifying it to make sure that we are feeling the relaxation and feeling the comfort and the calm coming to our eyes and to our mind? She even guides us through a couple little practical experiments with it. So this is also a little bit of a practical episode. And then in my chat with Nalini, we talk about this really interesting concept about looking with kind eyes and also being looked at with kind eyes. So it kind of takes us a little bit to the deeper level in terms of certain things associated with the connection of like communication and even the level of like safety, feeling safe either around other people or in certain situations and how that can affect how we see things. So yeah, hopefully by getting a little sample of June's sharing and Nalini's sharing, you can get a sense of how they teach natural vision improvement. And you also have an opportunity to work with them as well. So they're being added to the team and being onboarded so that you can actually set up online vision lessons with them through my website. So if you go to integraleyesight.com, not only can you set up consultations and vision lessons with me, but you can now also select to meet up with June or with Nalini. And as I keep training more people, we're going to keep hopefully expanding a team of teachers and professionals so that you have more options to choose from. Whether it's because you want to try a different teaching style or you know that June has a background and specializes in astrology, and you might be interested in learning more about that connection. Or, Nalini has complementary approaches with transformational coaching and Ayurveda, and you might want to kind of see how that plays into it. And, I'm going to keep adding more and more amazing people to the team over the years. Or maybe I'm unavailable and you want to get started sooner because now that my leg is healed and I'm able to be more mobile again, I am doing some more traveling this year. For example, going to Italy to speak at the Color Light event in May, and then attending the International Holistic Vision Conference in Spain in the fall. And I'm also trying to set up some more of these vision retreats here in Vermont this summer or fall. So, yeah, sometimes my schedule fills up as well, and it'll be nice to just have more availability for people as well. So, not only can you go to integraleyesight.com to learn more about working with me and June and Nalini, but you can also go there for updates and information about these events I just mentioned, because I'll be adding some of these details to the site as well. So let me know if you do have any interest in my teacher training program. I am keeping a little bit of a waiting list of people expressing interest so that the next time a group is forming, I can inform you and let you know if the timing's right. And this time next year, I'll probably also be putting out more information in a podcast about the teacher training program. So, as a reminder, in case you're interested. The other way to get even more of a glimpse into June and Nalini's teachings is to listen to episode 60 of the Better Eyesight podcast, because they were the guest readers with me to read the June 1924 edition of Better Eyesight. And that's actually a two-part episode, so it's a lot of material there to learn from them. And there's also some short interviews with them on their pages on my website that just shares a little bit more about their personal stories and backgrounds as well. But for now, I'm really excited to switch over to these new interviews with them so that you can once again get a little glimpse into how they work, and then you can look into working with them as well. So thank you very much and enjoy. Hey, I'm now
Nathan.
joined by June Milich. We're going to be chatting briefly today about what I consider to be a really important topic and something that you've been dropping into meetings and lessons and classes about this whole notion around the approach to these vision practices, vision improvement in general, not just looking at what practices we're doing, but specifically like how we're doing them. And also, this other word that I hear you say a lot and seems to be important to you personally and to the people you work with is fun. So, figuring out how to not only make sure we have the right approach to these practices, but furthermore, maybe it can even feel fun and, exciting. And I think that word feeling is something that you wanted to kind of chat about today is how do these practices like make you feel, and maybe even how do we start to like tap into those feelings more and more and more even without the practices. Maybe one day we get to the point where we don't really need the practices because we've gotten the feeling. So yeah, maybe if you want to share a little bit about how that's been kind of important personally in your own vision improvement journey, or how you have been maybe kind of starting to introduce that into more of the students you're working with.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. It actually first came to mind to me when I was swinging on a chart that was on a window, and And I started to realize as I was had my eyes open, swinging it and swinging it with kind of like not really fast, but just and enjoying it. And then when I'd go off to the side of the chart, I'd see the landscape outside and the trees and the grasses and all. And that's when I first started to tap into, oh, this feels so good. And until I had done that, it was a little bit of a chore to use a chart with swinging and such. So then I started to apply it with students. And for example, just using it like, let's say we're sitting because we're doing it on Zoom, and I'd have them like slowly scan across or swing across the icons at the bottom of the screen and off to the sides, and then having them close their eyes, but getting into the feeling of it. And things would get really quiet. And that to me was a sign that the person was getting into it. And so I could see you're doing it right now. Um, and and I thought that's, it is about quieting like the stresses, quieting the chatter of the mind, quieting but in the context of you're in you're in the middle of your day. It isn't that you're necessarily like at a time where you're meditating. It's more like this is gearing up for the day or in the middle or towards the end. So have seen it that this can be applied in many of the practices. And
Mhm.
when a person taps into how good a practice feels for them, it's like it becomes it's magic. It begins to open up, uh, I'd say, their mind to doing it in other places, to using it at other times. So it doesn't, they still can have a practice time and include it in that. But at the same time, it could be just when you're looking out the window and moving across the fence posts, let's say, or the windows on the house across the street, and just getting again into the feeling.
Mm.
So and as the feeling does seem to come out or become more obvious when a person has their eyes closed and they're just visualizing. But I don't emphasize that if they're doing the swing, what do you see? That's not the point. The point is, how do you feel? And then you might, then when your eyes are open, start to go, oh, and I like the color of that icon or that icon. And so it just seems to, why not enjoy what we see? It just, instead of it, I think those of us who've worn glasses for many years, or maybe people at the, beginning to, there's always a frustration involved in it. So we need that feeling of this feels good, I like it, and then it becomes a stress reliever. So I encourage people to use maybe one or two practices in particular if they're feeling stressed. I say, Bates talked about you can't keep a stressful thought when your eyes are moving and you're like, even with a swing is a great example of that. I mean, so if I get upset and I just start swinging, it's like it just goes off. And I
Mm.
have to make the effort then to hold on to those upset feelings. But that shows me right away, oh, no, that's not what's going to relax my eyes right now and relax my mind. So
Yeah, I'm
that's
glad you
what
brought
I,
up the glasses and the contacts and stuff because I think that maybe if that's what we're used to, if we've worn glasses for nearsightedness or farsightedness or astigmatism or anything, usually
Mhm.
at least at first when we get your first pair of glasses, it doesn't feel very good. Like first of all, when things are blurry and out of focus, it might not be a good feeling in the eyes or in the mind. And then even when you get glasses and all of a sudden you can see again artificially, that doesn't always feel good either. Usually it's kind of uncomfortable or people takes a little while to kind of adjust and get used to them. And then it's almost kind of like we're just tolerating this strain or discomfort, we've sort of adapted to it or gotten used to it. So then when people take them off and they start studying the Bates method, it I'm so glad you're talking about this, the importance of actually having that good feeling that might even be kind of almost forgotten. Like I forgot my eyes could feel good because I've been so used to them feeling not good for so long. And for
That's
you
right.
to then, make that connection of, okay, well, when your eyes start feeling better and actually it feels enjoyable, then you tend to see better too. And then that's kind of what enables more of the clear seeing without the glasses and associated with a good feeling, which is like a win-win. It's like you're not only are you not needing the glasses as much or if, at all anymore, but your eyes feel much better.
And I think it can work the other way as well. I was just thinking sometimes people will say, well, that doesn't feel very good, this particular practice or whatever. It's like, good, you know how that feels. So you don't right now that's probably not the practice for you to do. Or let's take it back to a preceding step instead of emphasizing the full practice. And the other thing I found too is that, for instance, at night, a lot of times people will talk about in the morning they wake up or maybe in the middle of the night and they feel tension or their eyes feel tired. And but just by being aware of something feeling good, then it's easier to think of, well, what can I do? Oh, I can palm my eyes while I'm here in bed, uh, whether it's lie on my side or do it something and in some way so that it's achievable and relaxed, or even if it's a one-handed, just lying on the side and doing that. So I found that sometimes a couple of minutes of that during the night, if I go, what happened during the preceding day to create this? But it becomes the channel through which the practices flow. That's what I've seen as well.
Yeah.
It just it's the invitation then to continue that good feeling.
Yeah, because then it almost simplifies things. It's like, okay, all I need to do for my eyes today is make sure they feel good.
Yeah.
And then each individual person comes up with their own list of things that they have tested and figured out, okay, this does tend to make my eyes feel better. This doesn't, so I'm gonna then it adds all this variety option. It's not necessarily like, okay, I wake up today and I have to do this whole list of practices because I think I'm supposed to, or because June told me to, or because I read it in a book, or it's kind of easy for us to think that that's what leads to the improvements and the healing of the eyes. Is like, well, I did all my practices. I did an hour a day for a month or whatever, but I'm not maybe seeing that much of a change or feeling that much of a change. And that's one of my favorite questions to ask people when they kind of like if I have a consultation with someone and I like to find out what are they doing? What kind of practices are they familiar with? What are they enjoying? And they'll usually list off a list of some of the practices they're aware of and that they're practicing. And then my follow-up question is like, um, which ones make you feel relaxed? And it almost kind of
Mhm.
like makes them take a step back because they're still in that mode of like doing and
Mhm.
achieving and kind of striving, as opposed to really
Yeah.
kind of what you're presenting today, which is like making sure people are really clear on what the sensation is that they
Mhm.
experience during the practice or as a result of the practice. It's like instead of thinking how many practices can I do, it's more like how relaxed can I get? And then it kind of shifts the intention or the approach. It's not just about I get a gold star because I checked all the boxes and I did all my things, but none of them really felt very good. None of them really led me
Yeah.
into a physiological shift into relaxation. Whereas maybe somebody
Right.
with the approach you're talking about today is like, okay, I know how important it is to feel and to sense the relaxation, and I'm just going to do one practice, and I'm going to, do it until I feel something. That also then answers the
Exactly.
question that a lot of people have asked, and I'm sure they've asked you as well, is, you teach a practice and then how long should I do it? How much should I repeat it? How often? What's the
Yeah.
duration? And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of what I'm hearing you describe today is like, do it for however long it takes to feel
That's
something
right.
good, ideally.
That's right. because it does help to just first of all, it's then empowering the person to realize, oh, I am okay, this is what's working for me.
Yeah.
And as you say, instead of just going by something that's read in the book and then a person gets then that ties into all kinds of things of like maybe feeling guilt and not putting enough time today or all these things that we work hard at to sometimes sabotage our successes. The other thing I like to emphasize with the feeling is I say to people, so therefore the goal isn't just the acuity of what you see on the chart. Again, it's if you start to feel there's strain, well, that's giving you a signal that you're either trying too hard or your your thoughts are kind of undermining the intention of the process. And I see the practices really as gateways to better habits. And so whatever works is what works for that person. And then sometimes, practices come up later that now it's easier to do them. Maybe there was more stress about it for some reason before, and now the person is in more of a place of ease and they feel, like drawn to do that now. But that's where then having, sessions helps because a person can sometimes they feel like nothing has been happening. But when we get back into maybe doing a practice or two together just to get a feel of how things are going, it brings to mind what they have been doing that has worked for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Because yeah, I agree with you, and I often say to people that this is not a cookie cutter approach of it's not just a one size fits all. It's really each person's opportunity to learn about themselves and how their not only how their eyes work, but how their mind works and what not only relaxes the eyes physically, but then what relaxes their mind, which according to Bates, that tended to be even more important because if there's even just a little bit of mental strain, then the eyes really start straining way more. So, yeah, to kind of glad you brought up the eyes closed part earlier too, of like, and sometimes we can sense things more sensitively with the eyes closed
Oh.
when we're kind of taking the eyesight piece out of the equation and really just turning that attention inwards. And I mean, this is straight from Dr. Bates, right? He had this little quote of relaxation is a sensation.
Hmm.
It's meant to be
Yeah.
felt. It's not just meant to be talked about or thought about, but sensed.
Hmm. Right. When I first started yoga, I was probably about, I don't know, early 20s. And I remembered after the first session, I went, I thought to myself, this makes sense. I started the gradual growing of tension in my body was gradual. It wasn't that I was thinking about it. It just throughout days, going to school, all those kinds of things that built up the tension. And then I thought, and yoga was showing me how yes, you're not trying to beat that tension out of yourself. You're coaxing it. You're doing an inner massage of the organs through the different asanas and such. And that was the first time I went, oh, yeah, this makes so much sense. Stress builds gradually, and the same with the eyes. How did we get here? It was a long road, probably, little by little. And so finding a way to intermittently feel those relaxation moments becomes longer periods of time. And I have found they do correlate with feeling like a person is seeing more clearly, having clear flashes. I mean, it's just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I love that because that, yeah, also hints at the approach that the person's
Mhm.
taking is, am I expecting this to all just happen really fast and overnight? And then we're realizing, oh, we're still kind of treating this holistic approach like we treated the more conventional approach of like a quick fix mentality of, even though it took me years to to develop the vision I have now. I'm expecting it to just transform overnight, but yeah, to really look at it of something that we're coaxing and we're being patient with, um, so that we're also sensitive to the other types of feelings that come up along the way, not just what relaxes you and what makes you feel good, but really noticing when it's not feeling as good, or like you said, like noticing that tension and the strain when it is showing up. So it's kind of twofold. We're getting better at sensing what the relaxation feels like, but also kind of sensitizing our strain radar so that we're more accountable, self-accountable for what it feels like when
Right.
we are straining or when we're not relaxed. All such good feedback to help us just make our way through the day and not accidentally fall back into bad vision habits.
Hmm.
Because you're right, a lot of this is really just about establishing these new vision habits that we can have for the rest of our lives. Maybe not
Hmm.
something that we need to keep practicing eventually because it's become embedded as a new habit.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, since a lot of this can seem kind of mental, I really appreciate how you keep bringing it back to the the sensation and
Hmm.
really checking in with ourselves either before we do a vision practice.
Hmm.
How am I
Hmm.
feeling leading into this? Am I even in the mood to do this right now? Do I have the right kind of energy and kind of, sensation going into it during the practice? As you're doing the swinging or the sunning or the palming, like what's going on? What am I feeling? What is this doing for me? And then even after the practice, noticing what was the effect of that? Was there any kind of change? Am I feeling different now than just a few minutes ago? And that's kind of the power of this is really staying very aware and attentive to what you're feeling as you prepare for a practice, do the practice, and even after the practice.
Totally, because I think a lot of times, and if it's sustained, if a person is able to, throughout the day, continue to give those relaxation phases, the next day, they're really going to feel the difference. And or it accumulates. And so the vision a lot of times doesn't seem to pop until there's been an accumulation because some days are stressful. They're just we don't have control over. We just have to manage through that day or certain times but in our lives. And so we do the best we can. But if we can nurture ourselves with that appreciation and uh, feeding ourselves that things that are going to give us that relaxation, it's fine. Did you want to do that again once more at the following the icons? Because since people will be watching this on on the computer, they're bound to see it. So maybe just do 30 seconds of it together, just to kind of get the feeling. I'll just do a walk through what I usually do with someone.
Yeah, so I'm just
So,
using the
okay.
icons at the bottom, like on the Mac.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, on the Mac, and I know there's some on the PCs, so just using those, it doesn't matter what color they are or whatever, but I do a process with it. So we can just start with just slowly sweeping across them and you can find your pace, but when you just let them glide across. So glide, whatever glide means to you. And you're seeing, as you're doing it, you are seeing them move to the other side of the way you're moving your head. That's the oppositional movement. And then closing the eyes. And and when you're closing the eyes, it's just a matter of not trying to remember exactly what you saw, but being aware of what pops up in your mind. Maybe it's was the picture on the wall off to the side, and your mind goes to, oh, that blue icon caught my eye. And then you open the eyes again and you do the same kind of shifting. You can shift to the top of the monitor or the top of the laptop screen because there's all little goodies at the top that inside the screen that you can be aware of. Be aware. They just sort of track that oppositional movement for you. and then closing the eyes again and continuing the same kind of physical sweep because it's already embedded in your mind of how far you've already moved your head and the kinds of things you were seeing. You might have a
Mm.
breath, a sigh come out, opening your eyes again.
You took the
And
words out of my mouth because the
yeah.
first, right when you got me into that, the first thing I felt was the breath. That seemed to
Mhm.
change. Like, before we did the practice, we were, my breathing was just more kind of normal and just kind of in conversation, talking is breathing. So I've been inhaling and exhaling as we've been going, but then, something about bringing in the eyes and the swinging, immediate deepening of the breath, and that seemed to then help me tune into what was going on with the eyes and the eye muscles and just kind of noticing little subtle movements and shifting happening. Um, and yeah, it felt very kind of presencing in terms of just
Yes,
coming into the present moment and just kind of learning how to tune into what I'm feeling in the present, in the movement.
right, right. And again, I just as you're saying this, I'm thinking, yeah, if a person's going through a sustained period of stress, and there's variations of that stress, but just being able to take respites from it. Sometimes people think, my I'm not able to keep up my practices right now. I've got too much going on or whatever. Well, that's why I like to emphasize the value to them of finding that place of that awareness of relaxation. And it doesn't always like solve the problems in the moment, but in a way, it solves how you relate to it, and
Mm.
maybe and then it gives the opportunity solutions come in, or what might be the next step, or just relaxing and then somebody calls and things are starting to resolve that you hadn't expected. So I think it sets off a cascade in our
Mm.
lives
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
is definitely related to the vision system because when people have gotten to the point where they've gotten glasses prescribed or whatever, they've been storing stress in their vision system for a long time. And so giving that release, is that's why we care about, I think, what happens with with the eyes, with the vision, because there's been that habit also of storing the stresses there. And so once those are released or at least relieved, um, other things start to shift and move. And there comes the same in life, just like as the eyes move, the mind moves, then the rest of our lives start to move as well. So,
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
hopefully in a better place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also getting me thinking, June, that, this whole fun thing
Mhm.
opens it up beyond the Bates method because, you know, and this was helpful for me to kind of realize in my own experience was any kind of relaxation counts. It doesn't just have to be Bates relaxation or eye relaxation. Anything in your life that relaxes you and anything that you have fun doing, I think it might be smart to think about, let's say you just, you know, really love playing tennis.
Hmm.
And then it's just like, okay, well, when I'm on the court, I'm just having a blast. I'm just having fun. I'm not really worrying or stressing and not even thinking about maybe my eyes or my vision or bait stuff, but how how can you just feel what's going on in your eyes when you're just having fun in general? And not to overthink it, but then just to kind of bring that layer of awareness of, oh, me going out and playing tennis is part of my vision practice because
Hmm.
that's me having fun and that's me relaxing my mind by playing tennis.
That's right.
Now, naturally,
It's,
there's a lot of good vision things built into something like tennis, like we did today with the swinging and the movement and shifting. I mean, that all happens automatically when you're playing any kind of sport, really. But yeah, that's kind of a good broadening piece to bring in here at the end of like, this really does apply to the specific kind of vision practices and bait stuff we've been talking about. But then we can also branch out and just think about what in my life is already fun and relaxing. And then we kind
Right,
of utilize that.
right. Um, and I think physical movement through sport or, you know, taking frequent walks, hikes, all of that is really, uh, and it gets us out of the four walls dimensions, out into uh, really in the opening up of our minds and our eyes, especially like myopia. That's really important because there's been the tendency, depending upon how long you wore glasses, of just closing in, like
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
walls are closing in, or limiting sports if you started wearing glasses as a child. So all kinds of things play into that. But the fun element, I think, is right. It's like you could take a sport that you already, or an activity that you really like doing already, and just being aware of how that makes you feel. You know, I think the indicators are how much do you feel like you're smiling, or you're smiling within, laughing, all of the things that I was thinking, even having your pets. You know, we've got a kitten. She's now 8 months, but she does the funniest things. And how many times just giggling, watching her,
Mhm.
burrow and into things or whatever. And it's those kinds of things in life that when you really come down to it, it's not going to be, you know, how many times did I win? It's going to be how many times did I feel good about who I was with and my life and also,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. And one thing you mentioned earlier was, this is one of the kind of purposes and benefits of getting some help from a teacher or guidance, because it's amazing how much material is out there available for people to do self-learning and self-teaching. But yeah, to meet up and actually have these kinds of conversations and to be kind of witnessed in the process and yeah, getting
Exactly.
really good tips on, once again, not just kind of like what to do to improve the vision, but really make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible to actually secure a good feeling, which then translates into good results and the clear moments like you brought up earlier. So yeah, hopefully this has served that purpose a little bit to give some people some insight into yeah, some of your knowledge and expertise here, and people can connect with you further and actually work with you and get some sessions to make sure they are on the right track and to make sure that they are actually having fun with this. So,
Right, right. It's just nice to, because so many people do say when that they feel they're on their own when they're doing these practices. There's not, it's not like saying to your friend, "Hey, let's go on the walk and watch the peripheral movement." It's fun doing things together with people, and also just being able to share the things that come up, because that's not the opportunity is really very limited. Who's going to listen to, let's say, if somebody talks about their I had this clear flash and then it disappeared. And I just got so frustrated with myself and whatever. And most people are going, what? So what are you worrying about? That stuff, why are you even trying to do it? So if it, these people are doing these practices because it matters to them and they value it. And so it's important to have someone along the way who's helping you and appreciating what you're going through with it, and then helping to connect what are those, again, feeling sensations and how that relates to the process. And realizing when a person's on their own, these things take time, and there's steps forward, maybe steps to the side, and so forth. And that's part of the common experience of improving the vision. But
for
there
sure.
aren't, you kind of need to find the sources that are going to support that process moving forward for you.
Yeah. Maybe make some new friends who are down to go on a walk and notice the peripheral movement
Yeah.
as you go.
Yeah, you could help someone else have fun doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I imagine yeah, it'd be really neat. So it'd be good.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this today, June, and even some practical stuff. So hopefully people have even already started to get some experience with it. So
Yeah, great.
yeah,
Okay,
great talking
Nathan,
with you
thank you.
today.
Great to talk with you too. Okay.
All right, we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Bye. All right, so I'm happy to be joined by Nalini Ramji today to have a short little discussion about an interesting topic that's been coming up for both of us. But a lot of times in this natural vision improvement world, we're talking a lot about the eyes naturally and the vision and the eyesight of how we see the world and perceive things. But there's also this interesting aspect of vision that has to do with the other way around in terms of us being seen and the way that we're being perceived and the quality of how the eyes can be kind of used in a sense. So this might go a little bit beyond kind of some of the physical stuff in terms of the good physical ways to be using our eyes, but maybe looking a little bit deeper into more of the kind of mental, emotional, psychological piece as well. And this is partly based off of a conversation that you and I had recently about this idea of not only being seen with kind eyes, being looked at with kind eyes, but even maybe even learning how to look with kind eyes as well. So yeah, maybe we could start off by you sharing a little bit about what that means to you, how it's shown up in your own life, and maybe even also in some of the students you've been working with so far.
Yeah. So I'm doing some training in transformational coaching. And the more I learn this material, I see how it intersects with the work of vision in that we've done in our training. And I've been particularly fascinated recently by attachment theory and how it's really a beautiful concept of how primates and humans, we are primed to come into the world and be met by caregivers. We don't know how to self-regulate until later in life when we learn it as a skill. But as babies, we come into the world needing to be cared for. And when your caregivers really attune to you, you you have your needs met. They can just read it, and you develop what's called secure attachment. If you have inconsistencies in that kind of caregiving response, then it is called insecure attachment. And one of the ways that that can manifest is um, you look out into the world, into, the face of your caregiver, and you're either met with a blank response or even perhaps anger. And what can happen in that case is as a baby, we become dysregulated and we we don't want to see. We don't want to see that. And we can blank it out. That's a particular kind of insecure attachment called avoidant attachment. And it was very fascinating to me that in my studies on how to come out of that avoidant attachment, one practice is you just imagine. And so now I'll say this, and perhaps if you're listening to this, you can try it. You just imagine being looked at with very kind eyes. And you can imagine somebody, if you can think back to anybody in your life, it needn't be someone who's a parent. It could be someone in present time. It could be an animal. Um, just imagine yourself being looked at with kind eyes. It could be a spiritual figure. It could be a movie character. But whatever speaks to you, and then just feel that in your body. What does that feel like? When you imagine that, what do you notice? Immediately, I can feel more grounded in the chair. I can sense my body. I'm not so much in my head. I can feel my heart slowing down and I also feel an expansion of my energy. But for each of us, it would be interesting, what does that do to your system?
Mhm.
For some people, it can be overwhelming, and that's okay. That might be something you blocked against. You were scared of seeing. And that could be something to work with. So there's no wrong answer to this. It's not like you have to get it this perfect way.
Yeah,
And
I
then
could
the second
immediately
part,
feel it in my eyes a lot, actually. With my eyes closed, it was almost like the eyes just sort of woke up in a sense and kind of I could feel them like shifting and moving more. And that was kind of the initial physical response. But then there was also this sort of like mental feeling or emotional feeling of like securedness, like reassurance, almost just like everything's all right. And it's pretty cool that we can tap into that with just a thought, like the imagination like that.
and that's so beautiful that you said even securedness and that everything is all right, because that's exactly what the baby is looking for.
Yeah.
So we're tapping right back, and this is what's called implicit memory. We may not have an explicit memory of what happened to us as babies, but just there, what that feeling is. Oh yeah, everything's all right. I'm good,
Mhm.
right? I mean, this is great because you have a baby in your life, a new baby in your life through your sister's son. So there are places we can practice this with babies, and you can even watch it with babies. But just to be able to tap into what did we meet and what perhaps is our attachment pattern and how can we self-regulate in the moment to come back to, because secure attachment never leaves. That's the other beautiful thing. So if we do have another attachment pattern like avoidant or anxious, that's another attachment pattern, we can always come home to secure attachment.
It's always there.
It's always there. We
Wow.
always have a way to come home. So now when I think about Dr. Bates and when he would talk about the foundational memory, or now we call it the pleasant, happy memory, he was tapping into that same thing. He was tapping into how do we come back to our home, secure attachment. But I love the idea of connecting that with um, knowing that we're safe, that we're home. Because the eyes are my yoga teacher. Yesterday, I was in her class, and she was talking about how the eyes are a window into our nervous system and our brain. So we're constantly, you know, on the lookout for safety and security, and our eyes are a big component of that.
Yeah, I love how this
Now, with
is
this,
even kind of helping to open the door into, yeah, thinking about what are some of the various types of root causes with why our vision developed the way it did or why it changed at a certain point in life. If we can connect it with either explicit or implicit memory and then also connecting it with the feeling associated with that, that seems really powerful.
and now with this kind eyes exercise, you can take it one step deeper, and you can actually feel yourself receiving that kindness into your eyes. And for some people, there can be a block there because they may have had um, unpleasant memories of being looked at in a certain way, from trauma. And that can be a place of healing as well. So there's so much you can do with just the idea of not only can I be looked at with kind eyes, but can I receive that into my eyes? Can my eyes actually take that in?
Yes. Love that because yeah, it's one thing to be looked at, it's another thing to receive that energy. And ever since you and I first talked about this, um, it just instantly made me think of this old blog post I wrote back in 2014. It's called Looking with Love, The Art of Receptive Eyesight. And yeah, it's really looking at this kind of two-way street of vision, how both we need to kind of check in with how am I, where am I at in terms of receiving kindness through my eyes from someone else's eyes? And, how do I feel about sending kindness and love out of my eyes at the things I look at? And yeah, it can really get us thinking about not only how we're looking at things and how we're kind of using these powerful eyes, which are these like really like windows, like you said, that can really be very communicative and expressive and also on these deeper levels of like you said, the safety piece of kind of there are protectors too in a way
Yes.
of what level of the kindness. I kind of see kindness and love as sort of interchangeable.
Yes.
How
That's
is that actually
beautiful.
showing up beyond what kind of eye exercises am I doing to improve my eyesight? It's more, well, how am I looking at things in general? And how comfortable am I with receiving not just kindness or love, but even just on a very basic level, how am I feeling about receiving light into my eyes? Because that's really what, these quote refractive errors like myopia and presbyopia and astigmatism and stuff are. It's like the light isn't being received properly. It's refracting differently. And maybe some of the things you're proposing today of imagining the kindness and tapping into that receptivity, who knows, maybe that will literally change the way that the eye organs focus light and how they receive the light onto the retina. And then how does the brain receive that? All these different stages of receptivity.
It absolutely, it absolutely does happen. I remember when I first did this kind eyes exercise, I could feel the difference. And, as I go deeper into this study, for example, then there's another type of insecure attachment, which is anxious. And I resonated the most with that. We can all have different parts of these, but I could see many times when I could be operating from that anxious attachment. And one of the interesting things I learned about that is what we've learned in anxious attachment. This is where the caregiving was inconsistent. Sometimes you got the response, you got the attuned response, and other times you didn't. So you became anxious because you didn't know when you'd get it and when you wouldn't. And you naturally would associate, what did I do wrong that I didn't get it this time? What am I doing right that I'm getting it this time? So it becomes self-referential. And you learn to hyper focus on the outside and lose yourself. And that is a very interesting thing to take in. As I started taking that in and realizing my tendency to be hyper vigilant about what was going on in the world and lose my sense of self, because many times I've said to you on our journey, this has been so self-empowering, this journey. Well, I can see why, because I had to develop and I'm continuing to refine that sense of self, even with my eyes open and looking out into the world, that the world doesn't become a place where I hyper, become hyper vigilant and lose any identity I have within. And this is something I see with my students. So coming back to what you were saying earlier about how would I bring this in with my students, um, this is something I really see about how um, we can get very, even, when you're trying to improve your vision, you can get very caught up in how does the outside world look? Very often, students I work with presbyopia, for example, they can see out there very clearly, but they can't see here because they've lost their sense of self. And what I'm noticing more and more, because since I also study with Peter Grunwald, and I know I have this tendency to have part, one eye that looks out into the distance and one eye that looks up close. I can see that tendency in me as well, the part of me that dissociates from my sense of self. And as I've been coming back to so a simple practice in this case is to say, okay, what is the Nalininess of Nalini? And can I hold that? And you can do the same with yourself. What is the Nathanness of Nathan? When you're inside yourself, who are you? That is uniquely you. And then to be able to hold that slowly, if you were to just glance open but not, look down at the floor, and can you still hold that sense of self? Till the point where you can get to looking out into the world and still hold your sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting how the eyes being open or closed really influences that. And when we kind of shut off the eyesight sense, maybe that helps us see within and connect in with that sense of self. And then something about opening the eyes and being pulled out into the external world might disconnect us from that, but learning how to stay very connected and very true to that when eyes are open and interacting with the world. And yeah, that could maybe even apply to any kind of memory or imagination or visualization. I think across the board, most people find it's a little easier with the eyes closed, maybe not so much with the eyes open. And that becomes kind of a
Yes,
fun practice of how can I gently hold that even when I'm interacting with all the stuff outside.
exactly. How do you still sense yourself? How do you feel your body? How do you just know? Because what happens is in the baby who's had this, um, inconsistent response, they continue crying, but they lose their sense of, when is something really aggravating or not, because all they're trying to do is get the response from the outside world. So this is what often leads to addictions or, other, sitting on the computer playing video games, just losing that sense of self. So the eyes become this beautiful.
Yeah.
So for me, what I'm noticing more and more is the eyes become this beautiful road back home. And what one thing I noticed in the training I did with you is I would wonder sometimes, when you would talk about, let's say, working with a student, and oh, let's take something simple like they're looking at the eye chart and just seeing the swing in the letters, right? Something external. And I would find when I would try that same thing, it wouldn't work for me. I would feel like immediately I would feel effort when I did that. So I said, okay, well, for some reason that doesn't work for me. It doesn't have to work for everybody. It doesn't work for me. I didn't know how to connect the pieces until very recently when I realized for me, it's not so much the world out there. I have to come back home. I have to stay here while my eyes are open. And the more I've been doing that, the more my vision has been clearing. So it's really fascinating to find out what is our particular pattern. What is the area that is really crying out, you know, to be seen, coming back to our, being seen, and to really address that area, for each of us.
Mm. Yeah, what a big lesson there. And this is you describing your process of learning to see again without using glasses or artificial lenses. And it's, naturally getting me wondering and thinking, what kind of effect do glasses or contacts have on this sense of self and on the connection with self? Because I don't know. When I think about when I used to wear glasses, maybe it helped me function, but it didn't really do that much for helping me feel at home in myself or connect with my true self. It almost felt like I had to kind of pretend to be someone else because the way that my true self was seeing was not acceptable. And I had to wear these lenses that changed the way I saw so I could fit in and be more normal. And then taking the glasses off, really my vision improved also, like you're describing, when I felt like I was back at home in my own self and my own vision. And not to say that people who wear glasses and contacts can't be themselves or to have that strong connection, but yeah, it's getting me thinking about what kind of other extraneous effects does maybe wearing these glasses have on some of these deeper levels. Kind of interesting.
It's very interesting because as Dr. Bates would look at, we people would become more myopic when they, told an untruth,
Mhm.
right? Um, there's something about in my training we talk about, the distortion, the layers of distortion in the mind, and even, if you look at yoga philosophy, how we want to cleanse the lens of perception, and it's very much tied to vision.
Yeah.
So it's probably, and we've all had the experience when we first got glasses of, hey, this doesn't feel right. Oh,
Mhm.
well, you'll just get used to them. So the brain has to adapt and change. So we get used to some level of distortion. And for some of us, it may be okay. That level of distortion isn't what's needing to be seen right now. But some others of us, because, I found Dr. Bates in my teens, and it took me years to actually actualize, this work. But for some of us, for me, it was gnawing it. Like, when am I going to get to my eyes? So I couldn't rest until I did that. But that's not where everybody has to work. It doesn't mean that they're not, doing what they need to do. Just it's where you it's where the attention's being drawn that the work needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've brought up Dr. Bates a couple times today, and you just got to assume that he and Emily both looked at people with very kind eyes. And part of me, you were just saying, at first I encountered the work and it didn't really click at first. And, what was missing was kind eyes. Like 100 years ago, people could just go and see Dr. Bates in person, and maybe there was something in that nonverbal communication of like, oh, this eye doctor is looking at me in a way that no other eye doctor has, and it's actually conveying certain, you know, messages in it, or it's like you don't even need to talk about central fixation or relaxation or any of this stuff. It's just like something about that connection there could have also been an important role, um, which is why probably also so many people report, getting better results when working with teachers and getting help from vision coaches, because if you're just reading about it or just doing it all by yourself and you don't have some of that kind eyes observing you throughout the process, it may not take as strong of a hold there. So yeah.
Absolutely right. That really speaks to what we do in a recent consultation I had, when we were ending the session, and the person I was working with was saying, so if I work with you, what more would we do? And ultimately I said, well, I'd be a witness on your journey. It's the work you're doing. I certainly had some tips and things I know from my training, but I'm not making you see through your eyes. But I can certainly be the kind eyes here. And that is absolutely, I mean, to be a witness, it's any kind of therapy or any kind of healing happens from being witnessed, right? So we those deepest layers of us can be seen that normally are missed from everyday life, right?
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful, and really appreciate you pontificating on this and sharing some of what you've been reflecting on and how it's been helping you personally, and also in you sharing it with other people. So
Mm,
yeah, it's definitely hoping that we could focus in on something that would, yeah, let people know who might be interested in working with you of what that might entail and what's involved. And so yeah, I think we got a nice little mini deep dive into the deeper layers of vision. So yeah, that's always something that has sort of shined through when I've worked with you, is just that eagerness to really just get into the deeper, meaningful aspects of what vision really is, and how it's so unique and individual per person. And yeah, so that's really, I think the benefit of actually working with people one-on-one is to have opportunities, create space for those deeper dives and explorations. It's amazing what people discover in there when you kind of guide them into that space. That's very meaningful, not only for vision healing, but overall healing. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this today.
Oh, thank you for this conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. So yeah, um, this also accompanies our other interview we did on the website integraleyesight.com/Nalani, where you just kind of share even a little bit more about your background and experience. And so yeah, people can keep checking that out, or just go ahead and reach out and connect with you and have a conversation with Nalani. So check the
Look forward
links
to
and
that.
everything to get that facilitated. All right. Thank you so much, Nalani. Talk again
Thank you,
soon.
Nathan. Absolutely. Look forward to it.